Wind gusts up to 90 miles per hour have already been recorded in South Dakota tonight. Hail up to 2 inches wide is falling right now across the Central High Plains. And more than 73 million people carry some level of severe weather risk tomorrow. Which means tonight's storms are just the opening chapter of a much bigger holiday story. Folks, we are going to walk you through tonight, tomorrow, and the 4th of July itself. There is a lot riding on this forecast, since fireworks, cookouts, and travel all hang in the balance. We will save the biggest surprise for the holiday itself, so stick with this one. First, let's start with what is happening on the ground across the Dakotas right now. An enhanced risk of severe storms covers far eastern South Dakota into southwest Minnesota, which means that enhanced risk also stretches into the extreme northwest corner of Iowa. Several clusters of thunderstorms are already active across the Dakotas into northern Iowa tonight, which means multi-cell clusters and supercells are ongoing across the western Dakotas at this hour. Large hail to very large hail and damaging wind remain the top threats through the evening, which means a storm cluster crossing southeastern South Dakota has a genuinely wild history tonight. That specific cluster has previously produced significant wind gusts of 90 to 100 miles per hour. Good Lord! That is hurricane force wind coming out of a summer thunderstorm cluster, which means more recent observations have settled closer to 60 to 70 miles per hour. Earl, a rancher out in western South Dakota, is watching that exact cluster track tonight. Earl says a storm history like that is exactly why he never ignores a severe warning, which means he moved his herd toward the lowest, most sheltered pasture on his land tonight. He says preparation happens the moment the sky starts looking wrong, not after it arrives, which means that damaging wind potential is expected to continue downstream for the next couple hours. Additional development is possible along the trailing outflow into northern Nebraska later tonight, which means Nebraska residents should not assume this threat stays confined to the Dakotas. A secondary storm cluster may also move eastward across northern Iowa later this evening, which means round 2 tonight is a real possibility for folks who saw round 1, which means that enhanced risk zone alone covers close to 600,000 people. Out on the Central High Plains, isolated supercells are firing across eastern Colorado tonight, which means southern Nebraska and western Kansas share that same supercell risk this evening. Some of these storms have already produced hailstone cores pushing close to 2 inches wide, which means a hailstone that size can shatter a windshield or dent a car roof fast. Strong, deep layer wind shear and seriously unstable air are fueling these storms tonight, which means large to very large hail and severe wind gusts remain likely through the evening. No two ways about it. Tonight's high plains storms mean business for anyone caught outside. Earl says high plains hail like this can strip a cornfield bare within just a few minutes. Up in the northeast, a line of storms is sagging south out of Quebec tonight, which means a few instances of strong to severe wind are possible before sunrise. That is tonight's setup, and it rolls almost directly into tomorrow without much of a pause. Now let's look ahead to Friday, since the Storm Prediction Center has an enhanced risk posted. That enhanced risk covers central Nebraska into western Iowa for the entire day Friday, which means scattered wind damage and large hail are both expected across that corridor. Overnight outflow is expected to mix with fresh instability building across the northern high plains, which means storms will fire initially over the northern high plains before growing in coverage. Larger coverage is expected from southern South Dakota into northern Nebraska Friday afternoon, which means those storms are likely to grow upscale into one or more organized clusters, which means supercells may develop initially. That is capable of large hail and even a brief tornado, which means Friday carries a slightly higher tornado risk than what we are seeing tonight. An increasing low-level jet during the evening will help fuel that severe potential further, which means Friday evening could end up more active than Friday afternoon in that corridor. Frank, a retired teacher down in Springfield, Illinois, is watching Friday's forecast closely too. Frank says a corridor from Wisconsin through Illinois into New York is set to destabilize Friday, which means his part of Illinois sits inside a real severe weather chance Friday afternoon. He keeps a weather radio on his kitchen counter for exactly this kind of setup, which means storms are most likely from Wisconsin and Illinois during Friday's late afternoon, which means that same corridor extends into the lower Great Lakes, affecting Ohio and New York, which means longer-lived clusters capable of damaging wind gusts are possible across that stretch. No joke. Some of that activity may even push into western New England by early evening, which means residents from the Great Lakes to New England should watch Friday's forecast closely. Down in the Tennessee Valley and northern Georgia, Friday brings its own round of storms too, which means multi-cell clusters moving northwest are expected there during the afternoon hours. Friday's slight risk zone stretches from New York and Chicago down through Philadelphia and Detroit, which means that zone alone covers more than 73 million people across many states. A broader marginal risk zone adds close to 72 million more into that same mix. Frank up in Springfield says a population number that size truly puts Friday in perspective. So here's a question for you. Which part of this forecast matters most to your holiday plans? Is it tonight's storms, Friday's setup, or what happens on the 4th of July itself? Also, type the name of your city in the comments so we can track it for you. Now here is that surprise we promised you, because the 4th of July brings 4 separate stories. This is not just one holiday forecast, it is 4 completely different weather threats at once. Let's start with the heat, because the East Coast is about to hit its peak. That heat dome parked over the east is not backing off before the holiday. It is peaking, which means Washington, D.C., Baltimore, and Philadelphia are all forecast to hit actual highs near 100, which means that same heat stretches all the way up through New York City and Boston, which means millions of people along that corridor face seriously dangerous heat on Independence Day. Combined with humidity, the heat index could climb to 105 or 110. Which means daytime parades and family cookouts carry a real heat-related health risk this year. Cities along that corridor have already opened cooling centers ahead of the holiday, which means officials are actively urging residents to avoid large gatherings during peak afternoon heat. Sandra, a retired librarian in Alexandria, Virginia, has watched plenty of hot D.C. area summers. Sandra says the 4th of July heat this year feels different from anything in recent memory, which means even a short outdoor parade could turn dangerous without real precautions in place. She plans to watch this year's fireworks from an air-conditioned car instead of a blanket, which means even after sunset, temperatures are expected to stay stubbornly parked near 80 to 85, which means that is the temperature during the fireworks themselves, not just the heat of the day, which means there is no comfortable window on the 4th this year, morning or night. So that is threat number 1, a historic heat dome peaking right on Independence Day. Threat number 2 comes from the exact same heat dome, just at its outer edge. Honest to goodness. Where hot air collides with cooler air from the north, storms explode. Meteorologists call this setup a ring of fire, and it is aimed at the holiday evening, which means a corridor from the upper Midwest through the Ohio Valley into the Mid-Atlantic is at risk. That corridor is expected to fire strong to severe thunderstorm clusters Saturday evening specifically, which means the timing lines up almost exactly with when most fireworks shows are scheduled, which means heavy rain, frequent lightning, and wind gusts over 60 miles per hour are possible, which means a wind gust that strong can snap tree limbs and send debris flying fast. That gust range sits well below the 90 miles per hour clocked in South Dakota tonight. Organizers in multiple cities may be forced to delay or cancel fireworks displays that evening, which means downed trees and scattered power outages are both realistic possibilities on the holiday night. Dale, a retired electrician up in Toledo, Ohio, sits right inside that ring of fire corridor. Dale says Ohio Valley storms have canceled more than one fireworks show in his lifetime, which means his family always keeps a backup indoor plan ready for the 4th of July. He checked his gutters and secured anything loose in the yard ahead of Saturday night. So that is threat number 2, ring of fire storms aimed directly at holiday evening plans. Heads up! Threat number 3 takes us out west, where the danger has nothing to do with rain. Extremely low humidity and gusty wind have turned the Southwest into dry, dangerous territory, which means fire officials are not taking any chances with personal fireworks this year. Which means red flag warnings cover the Four Corners region, spanning Utah, Colorado, and Arizona. Which means that entire stretch is primed to ignite from a single stray spark today. Most local agencies across that region have issued outright bans on personal fireworks this year, which means campfires are also banned in many of those same communities through the holiday. Officials are still being cautious after earlier fires this season burned thousands of acres, which means nobody out there wants to risk another fast-moving wildfire during a holiday weekend, which means several Southwest cities are replacing traditional fireworks with drone light shows instead. Flat out, a drone show beats an evacuation order any day of the week out there. Dale says he has watched more towns switch to drone shows every single year since he retired. So that is threat number 3, a fireworks ban across the entire Southwest fire danger zone. And now for the strangest threat of all. Because not every part of this country is hot. Out in the northern Rockies, campers are packing winter coats for an Independence Day trip, which means Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming are stuck in a truly unusual cold pattern. A deep trough of unusually cold air has settled over that region and refuses to budge, which means daytime highs there are running tens of degrees below where they should sit in July, which means some higher elevation campsites could even see scattered snow mixed into the holiday, which means a 4th of July camping trip up there might come with a real coat this year. Honest to goodness, snow in the Rockies during a national holiday built for shorts and sandals. So that is all 4 threats: heat, storms, fire danger, and cold, all on one holiday. Wind gusts up to 90 miles per hour have hit South Dakota, and that pattern continues tonight. Hail up to 2 inches wide is falling across the central high plains at this hour, and more than 73 million people carry some version of tomorrow's severe weather risk. Margaret, a retired nurse down in Lake Charles, Louisiana, has treated heat illness every summer. Margaret says a holiday built around standing outside is exactly when heat stroke sneaks up on people. Which means pacing yourself matters just as much as sunscreen during a 4th of July cookout. Which means she tells her grandkids to take water breaks before they ever feel thirsty. Which means 4 completely different weather stories are sharing the exact same holiday weekend. Nobody is ready for how differently this 4th of July is shaping up across the country. Out of nowhere, a quiet holiday evening can turn into storms, heat danger, or even snow. Hits different when you realize your holiday plans might depend on which of these 4 zones. If you are anywhere near that East Coast heat dome, drink fluids and seek shade often. Which means scheduling parades and cookouts for morning or evening truly helps beat the worst heat. Which means never leave kids or pets inside a parked car, even for a few minutes. Which means a car interior can turn deadly within minutes, even with the windows cracked. Heat stroke is a true emergency, so do not hesitate to call for help if needed. Which means checking on elderly relatives and neighbors matters just as much as watching the sky. Which means if storms move through during your fireworks show, treat any warning as real. Which means get to the lowest, most interior room in a building the moment thunder rolls in. An open field or a parking lot is the worst possible place during lightning tonight. Margaret says she has treated more holiday injuries from lightning than from actual fireworks themselves. Flat out, no fireworks display is worth standing outside once real lightning starts flashing nearby. Which means checking radar before you leave the house matters just as much as packing sunscreen. Comment the name of your town below, and we will work it into our holiday update. Which means we will keep tracking all 4 of these threats straight through the holiday. Which means updates will follow the moment any of these systems shift direction or intensity. Your comments genuinely help us decide which threat gets the closest coverage next. Which means this kind of 4-threat holiday stretch rarely comes around on the calendar. Joining forces, a heat dome, ring of firestorms, Fire danger and mountain cold rarely align like this. Keep your phone charged through the holiday, since losing power cuts off your warnings fast. Which means checking the forecast more than once before you head out is honestly your smartest move. Earl out in South Dakota is watching tonight's cluster. And Frank in Springfield is doing the same. Dale up in Toledo has his backup plan ready. And Sandra in Alexandria has hers too. Margaret down in Lake Charles is reminding her family to pace themselves through the holiday. No joke. This is one of the more complicated holiday forecasts we have covered in a while. Mark my words, this pattern is not settling down until well after the holiday passes. Plain and simple. This holiday calls for a charged phone, a backup plan, and zero guessing. Wind gusts up to 90 miles per hour have already been recorded in South Dakota tonight. Hail up to 2 inches wide is falling right now across the Central High Plains. And more than 73 million people carry some level of severe weather risk tomorrow.